Welcome, everyone. My name's Emily Cucuzzo. I am the president of AMA Boston. It's so nice to see so many familiar faces, and I'm so excited to hear this amazing webinar with Marcus. I know, Brian, really appreciate you spearheading this. I know this has been a long time coming, so it's super. I'm just super grateful to all parties involved for getting this going. Quick thing about AMA Boston, we are a educational and networking association based in the Boston and greater Boston area. We do serve a few New England regions, such as New Hampshire, a little bit of Vermont, having a Rhode Island event later in May, and then we try to get up to Maine at least once. So we try to get around the New England area and host events there. But we mainly host two types of events. So the first one is events like this, which is educational events where you learn about marketing and different parts of marketing. And the second is more of a networking event where either virtually or in person, you get to meet other marketers in the area. So we hope to see you at the next event. Check out our events either on Eventbrite or on our website. We keep them up to date. And I'll give a brief intro to Marcus. I know you've already read through his bio. It's quite impressive. So I'm not gonna go through each part because it's so long, Marcus, and we're so
Yeah, you can just say he's a pool guy.
he's a cool
Yay!
guy.
And
He's a cool
then we
guy.
could start.
All
Yeah.
right. All right. He's a cool guy, and we're excited. So Marcus, there you go. Over to you.
All right, everybody, welcome. I'm so happy we're together today. I want this to be one of those things. If you want to ask a question, obviously you can. I mean, I don't want you to feel like you're gonna like throw me off or anything. If we don't get it all covered, then we don't get it all covered. But I got a feeling we're gonna be just fine here. And we're going to be together for about an hour. You can use the chat too, of course. And so if you have questions, you can say them in chat. And always love any interaction that you want to offer. Okay. So with that being said, let's just jump into it. Let's talk about endless customers, that thing that we're all striving for as marketeers, and that is always the goal. I want to start with a fellow Bostonian that some of you uh, probably know, which is Steve Scheinkoff. They're at Yale Appliance. And so Yale Appliance is a kitchen appliance company in Boston, Mass. And Steve came to me about, I guess it was a little bit over 10 years ago. And he said, Marcus, I've been reading some of your stuff. We're doing some content here. We're doing some digital, just not seeing a lot of traction. And I don't really know why. And I looked at his content and I said, well, Steve, the reason why is because you're really not obsessed with the buyer and you're doing it like everybody else. And you can't do it like everybody else. And he said, all right, so what do I need to do? I said, you need to become like really obsessive. When you hear a question from a buyer, you need to ask yourself, have we addressed it well? Do we own that conversation online? Have we leaned into it, text, video, etc.? Make a long story short, Steve leaned into what was known as they asked you answer at the time. He leaned into it better than anybody I had ever seen, but he did things that nobody had ever done. And I'm going to show you one of the things that he did that nobody had ever done in the kitchen appliance space. And that makes him today really the foremost, I think, trusted advisor when it comes to kitchen appliances online in the world today. So, one of the questions that people have all the time when they're buying a new appliance is, what's like the least serviced kitchen appliance that you sell? And he was getting asked that question all the time. And so his choice was, well, I can openly talk about the least serviced kitchen appliance brands we sell. But the problem is, if I talk about it, that means I'm going to have to maybe throw somebody under the bus because I'm not going to mention, or I need to mention some of these other brands that are not so least serviced. In other words, who's more serviced or most serviced? And so Steve, being Steve, he said, "All right, well, I'm gonna send this full send," and he created a series of articles that to this day have made and videos that have made just a massive impact on the industry. And it started around 2017, and he created an article that was the least service, most reliable appliance brands of 2017 or 2018. I forget the year. And that article was read 50,000 times a month for a year straight. And to this day, it's gotten so much momentum that he continues to do it. In fact, This is the article from this year, the most reliable appliance brands for 2025. And I want you to look at the first sentence here of the post. You're about to read the most debated appliance article on the internet. Seriously. Isn't that great? I just think that's great. And it just shows you right out the gate that he is willing to just play ball, and he's willing to be brave, and he's willing to be different. And he doesn't just do it like that. I mean, he does it in article and video format. But what's wild about this is this year you see that he shows you the least serviced, which is Gaggenau. Does anybody have that brand, by the way? I'm not familiar with that brand, but that must be like some really great, brand or something like that. But it's made by Bosch. All right. So that's the least serviced. Does anybody want to know the most serviced brand? You might have this in your house right now. Most serviced brand. Um, one of the most was GE. So with a 9.5% service rate. So here's what's interesting. Would most businesses have the courage to put content out like this? And of course, I think we all know the answer. The answer is no. And the reason is because they're more afraid of what the vendor, the OEM, or the manufacturer is going to do than they are of giving the buyer what they want. But Steve's obsession is with the buyer, and he's willing to be very, very different. And I think as marketers today, if we're going to be extraordinarily successful, we've got to be willing to be very, very different too. Like I said, this is his video from this year. So if you look at Yale Appliance, they've got 55,000 subscribers on their YouTube channel, which is pretty good for like a appliance retailer in Boston, Mass. That's really impressive. All right. And that of course that gets a ton of love every single year. If you look at some of his most viewed videos he's ever done, like appliance brands you should never buy. Top three reasons to never buy a counter depth refrigerator. And like he actually gives them. It's not like bait and switch here. This is actually legit. This is telling you straight up. 5 kitchen vents you should never buy. There you go. Don't buy them. I don't recommend them. Are you thinking like this? Are you being like this brave? When he started, first time we met, he had one store, um, and it was doing about 30 million in sales. So it was a good sized company. Today he's doing 150 million. He's got 4 stores. It's interesting too because it's happening in a time when everybody's saying retail's dying. Yet he's growing more retail stores. Everybody's saying Amazon's, destroying us. Yet he's thriving. Why is that? I would argue that he's doing it because he is willing to play a very different game. He's pushing the envelope. So would I ask you, what envelopes are you pushing with your marketing in 2025? Now, granted, I understand that sometimes it's really hard to push envelopes if your leadership team doesn't have this mindset. The number one email that I've received over the years is from frustrated marketers, not from business owners. That's number two. Number one is from marketers that are just like, I catch the vision, but I can't get my team to catch the vision. I totally get it. I totally understand. I know that's very, very frustrating. And so if you're in that position, I'm sorry. Best thing that you can do is, I tried to write the Ask You Answer Now, of course, endless customers for that purpose to convince the hard-headed CEO or leadership team um, that doesn't want to catch your vision, that you're able to help them see it. There's this old saying, you could be a prophet to the world, but nobody will listen to you in your hometown. And I think a lot of marketers feel like that. It's like we have this great thing that we want to bring to our company, but we're not heard oftentimes. And that's why the success of a marketer and their ability to do things extraordinary in their space, it always rises and falls with the willingness of the leadership team to take risk and be different every single time. And that's why, as marketers, we should constantly push that conversation when we are in that job search phase, if we're doing interviews, things like that. Such a big deal to our success. So for those that don't know my story, by the way, I used to be a pool guy. I started a swimming pool company in 2001 called River Pools. Things were going okay up until the crash of 2008, 2009, and that was a really painful time. And there's a lot of fear, similar to right now. There's a lot of worry and it's like trepidation out there. But what's really great about any time like right now is people get more innovative. Companies get more innovative. They have more of a YOLO mindset. In fact, you get more liberties as a marketer when the economy isn't as good and when leads just aren't just flowing right on in there. And I'm not saying this is like the greatest thing, but there will be some benefits that come from any type of slowdown. And so, from this period of time, I started researching, and as I was researching, I was like, okay, so what you're telling me with all this content marketing, inbound marketing stuff is I just need to obsess over my customers' questions, worries, fears, issues, concerns. I need to be willing to address those online. I need to do it through text and video. I'm like, huh, I can do that. And so we did that. We became the most trafficked swimming pool website in the world. And that led to me writing a book in 2017, then 2020, called They Ask You Answer. They Ask You Answer's done really well. It's been read all over the world, sold over 100,000 copies. And now, though, I've got a new book coming out, Endless Customers. And, why something new? Because as you know, things are changing in the world of marketing, and they changed a lot in November 2022. Now, one fear that I have for any time that I speak anywhere. This is just new ideas, right? Whenever we hear a new idea, it's really, really easy for us to say that won't work for us. I'm just going to be really frank and saying I think that is the laziest way of thinking we can possibly have. It never leads to innovation, never leads to great change. It's very, very easy to say that won't work for us. What's hard is seeing something that has been done in your space before or has been done in your company, and then figuring out a way to apply the principle to you or getting the approval for that thing. But it's worth it. And it pays to be different today. So, as we're having this conversation, I'd ask that you have that very open heart, open mind mentality, and that you come from this place of, okay, yeah, I know that hasn't been done before by us, but if we did it, would it induce more trust? Would it produce great results? And of course, generally the answer is yes. So November 30, 2022, ChatGPT comes out. And like many of you, I got on pretty quickly and I said, son of a gun, world ain't ever going to be the same. As soon as ChatGPT comes out and people started seeing it, I started getting questions like, so Marcus, well, what does this mean for they ask you answer? And what does this mean for content? What does this mean for websites? What does this mean? What does this mean? And I think there's a lot of TBD there, like still yet to be determined what this means for all these things. But I do have some pretty strong hunches. Um, I don't make a ton of predictions, but I do make some, certainly when it comes to buyers and trends. And more often than not, I feel like I've been on the right side of history. And so when I look at this, a couple things that it means to me as marketers, for 2 decades plus, we had this incredible tool that if we understood how to do search or even paid ads, we could just do extraordinary things. Now, can we still do that with Google today? Yes, but daggone, as you know, it's a lot harder. Everything from the zero-click phenomenon to AI summaries to related answers to the fact that no longer does the first, whoever ranks first get 80% of the clicks like it was for so long. I mean, because you're buried, 3 scrolls down the page past everything else that they want to show first. And so we know that we cannot build our house on Google alone. It's like building on sand. And we've known for thousands of years to not build a house on sand. And I don't think we should build a marketing strategy on Google. I think we should still pay attention to it. And I still think we can certainly leverage it and use it. But I have talked to hundreds and hundreds of companies already this year that have told me I'm having a tougher time with search and I'm having a tougher time with paid ads. I'm spending more than I used to spend on paid ads. I'm getting less results. So that's the trends that pretty much everybody's seeing. As I mentioned, for 20 years, the two groups that we had to really focus on were number one, search engines like Google. We had to be recommended by them. And two, we had to be recommended by customers. But today, we've got to be recommended by three groups. And the third one, I think, the new one, is the one that's going to dictate our futures more than any other. It's interesting. When AI came out in November 2022, for the most part, we were just like creating fun little poems, maybe playing around with some articles. We weren't, for the most part, using it as a recommendation tool. The future of AI is very much a total assistant in every facet of our life. In fact, I haven't said this. If you don't follow me on LinkedIn, by the way, you probably should, just because that's like the place where I share all my thoughts first. And sometimes you'll like them, sometimes you won't, but at least I'll make you think. We have been saying for 2 years that AI is a tool. I don't think AI is a tool anymore. I mean, sure, could it be called that? Could it be used as a tool sometimes? Yes. I think saying AI is a tool is like saying electricity is a tool, or nuclear energy is a tool, or water is a tool. To me, these things aren't tools, right? They're literally energy, if you will, and that energy is is all around us, and it's going to be more ever present. So it went from a tool to being like a full-time assistant to anything we needed, to being this omnipresent energy. That's where we're going with it, and that's where it's where we're headed. But the point is, we got to win the game with AI. And we sure as heck got to make sure our brand is being recommended by AI. And if we're not being recommended by AI, there's a pretty decent chance that we're going to be in big, big trouble. And so we can't allow that to happen. Okay. So with that being said, what do we do? Well, I think what doesn't change for us as marketers is we must become the most known and trusted brand in our market. And we've got to send out enough signals to the world that those three groups, the buyer, the customer, the search engine, Google, and the AI, that they recommend us because of these trust signals that we're sending out to the world. The new book, Endless Customers, is a system, kind of like EOS is a system, but this is a system designed to help people become this most known and trusted brand. And it's built on 4 pillars. And those are the 4 pillars I want to share with you. And I want us to do an audit as we're having this conversation. I really want you to say, like, am I doing this? Are we doing this? And have that conversation with your leadership team. Like, have a frank convo with everybody's like, are we really doing this? It's easy to say yes, but when we get to the nuts and bolts of it. Okay, so if you want to become the most known and trusted brand in your market, what do you need to do? Well, here's the 4 pillars. Number one, you need to be willing to talk about or say online what others aren't willing to say. So, as we get into it, what are you saying right now online that others in your space just won't talk about? Right? That's number one. Number two, you gotta be willing to show what others in your space aren't willing to show. Number three, we gotta be willing to sell in ways others aren't willing to sell. Now, show is with video. Sell is a combination of sales and marketing teams. Are you selling differently than the market, than your competitors? You talk to most companies, they say yes. Now, you might, as a marketer, say, I'm not really sure that is going to fully apply to me. And yes, it absolutely does. Most sales innovation today starts with what the marketing team is doing, not so much with the sales team. And I'll show you that. And then number 4 pillars, we've got to be more human than others in our space are willing to be. There's got to be a face behind the brand. And that's our job as marketers, to build those faces, to become known faces in the market. So you got to be willing to talk about what others aren't willing to, or say what others aren't willing to say in your space. You got to be willing to show with video what others aren't willing to show. You got to be willing to sell in a way that others aren't willing to sell. And you've got to be more human. Let's break down a few of these and let's challenge ourselves. Pillar number one, say what others are not willing to say online. Now, before I say this, before we talk about it, I want you to think, what are we saying that nobody else is saying in our space? I hope you're doing this. One thing that hasn't changed from they ask you answer to now is that there's essentially 5 subjects that we are obsessed with as buyers. This will not change. It doesn't matter what happens with AI or technology. What will not change is that we continue to be obsessed with 5 things when we're researching anything to buy. And I've called those the big 5 for a long time, and they work. And they work just as well for B2B as they do B2C. It doesn't change. Here's the big 5. They continue to like ring true, incredibly true, a decade into this. As buyers and consumers, we want to know, how much is it? And all of our questions around cost and price we want addressed. We want to know what could go wrong with it, problems, negatives, objections. It's interesting. When we get serious about buying something, we just want to know what could go wrong. And that's where the fear comes in. Yet most companies don't want to talk about that. Number 3, we're obsessed with comparing things online. Our product versus another product, method versus method, company versus company, brand versus brand. People love to compare stuff online. Number four, reviews. The thing about reviews, of course, is we don't just want the good reviews, we want the good, the bad, and the ugly reviews today. In fact, if you only have positive reviews, it makes people fear you a little bit like, hey, there's something that's missing here, something's wrong. And then finally, best, best, most top. Think about how many times you've gone online and searched best, right? So these are the big five. What's wild is consumers are obsessed with them, buyers are obsessed with them, businesses still to this day don't like to talk about them, don't like to talk about them. And I would even ask you how much of your content right now relates to these five things, realistically. If you look at all the content that you have online, how much of it really relates to these five things? And are you addressing them well? Because somebody in your industry is. Question is, are you? And this is oftentimes where we get denied by leadership. This is why they got to read the book and things like that, because otherwise they're going to say there's no way we can do that when they can. So let's just talk about the cost conversation for a second. I, if you read the Ask Against, you know that there's this deep psychology to cost. And we have to understand buyer psychology when it comes to cost. When we're on a website, we're looking for cost and price information, we can't find it. We get frustrated. We don't dig further for long because we'll leave. We don't call the company. Instead, we keep researching until we find what we're looking for. And generally speaking, that's who we're going to give our business to, or at least that's who we're going to reach out to first. Now, that's the way we behave as buyers. Now, what's wild though, as businesses, we still excuse as to why we don't want to talk about cost and price. We're not willing to say what buyers want to know. The reasons why is we say every job is different. It's one of the easiest ones to explain. And by the way, in the new book, I've got this, I've got an entire chapter on what entails the perfect pricing page for a website and online. Like, what does the perfect pricing page look like? But when it comes to that, if you create a great cost piece of content, video, article, etc., it should be done in such a way that you explain what drives costs up in your industry, what drives costs down, why some companies are expensive, why some companies are cheap. That's what you should do. What's interesting to me is like you look at, let's say, a SaaS product, a lot of SaaS products, if you go to their pricing page, they only have this like good, better, best, but they don't teach you about the industry. And so what happens is you don't really have a good sense for value in the marketplace. The biggest key to talking about costs is teaching someone value in the marketplace. And then you can talk about yourself. The problem is we think that talking about costs means I got to give exact prices. That's not what it means. What it means is we need to teach them value of the thing, teach them how to buy the thing, give them a sense for where we are, give them a sense for how much it's going to cost. Because if we don't do it, somebody else will. And because we did this with River Pools before anybody else in the world did, I still to this day have tracked this, the first article I ever wrote about how much does the fiberglass pool cost. We've updated it every single year. We track the leads that came from HubSpot through it. And that one single article made over $35 million in sales for my company, Virginia. That article originally took me 45 minutes to write. All right, 45 minutes to write. Now, there's different levels of discussing cost and price online. Okay. I call them 5 levels, but level 0 is when you have a what like is a pricing tab on your website. Somebody clicks it, they get a form. It says fill out the form, and we'll get back to you to give you a quote. All right, that just really pisses people off. I call it level 0 because it doesn't even deserve a level 1. It's a total bait and switch in the moment, and you know you hate that. Yet I guarantee you, sadly, there's some of us on this call right now. We literally have that on our sites right now. Now, level 1 is when we're willing to have at least one, if not multiple pages of our site and text where we really explain value and what drives costs up and down, etc. Okay. Number 2 level is when we have that plus a really extensive video that explains value. Number 3 level is when we have or give someone the ability to get a real-time estimate. I'll show you what that looks like later. And number 4 is when you give a real-time quote. All right. Most companies can't necessarily give a real-time quote, but everybody can do at least level 3, which is give a real-time estimate. So this whole idea of it depends, that's easy to address. All right. The reasons that people also say is, well, I don't want to scare someone away. What scares people away online is ignorance. It's when they can't find what they're looking for. What we love is when someone teaches us. Sometimes we say, well, we can't talk about it because I don't want my competitors to see it. It's nothing proprietary here. Your salespeople have a pretty good sense as to what your competitors charge. They have a good sense as to what you charge. This is the big secret, non-secret. So I'd ask a question. How many of you right now, okay, there's, whatever, 40 of us here on this call right now. In the chat, I want you to type in just yes or no. Type a yes if you extensively discuss cost and price of your product or service on your website, or no if you do not. All right. and do it in chat, and please play the game because otherwise we won't learn as much. So let's look at this. We've got probably right now we're running around a 65% no. All right, 65% no. Now, for example, Jen, you said, in fact, it's challenging to determine pricing based on an hourly rate versus retainer. It's actually really easy, Jen, and that's normal because let me give you an example. If I came to you right now, Jen, and I said, can you help me understand how much your product or service costs? You'd say, well, yeah. Or if I said, well, well, how much am I going to spend? You say, well, I got to ask you some questions, Marcus. And so all those are factors that impact things. You might explain to me that in your world there's retainers and there's hourly rates. You might explain what drives some hourly rates higher, what drives some hourly rates lower. You might explain how the retainers work in your industry. You might explain how different companies do it. You see, all those things you could explain. You could explain different projects and what people normally spend roughly, like on average. There's many ways that you can do it. But so don't allow the fact that you can't give an exact answer to hinder your ability to give buyers what they want. Okay. And so this is one of those things that generally speaking, we can talk about it if we want to talk about it. The key though is being a part of the conversation. That's our job as marketers. Okay. 35 million from one article. Let me give you an example of a really great pricing page. This is so good. And listen, what I'm going to show you, this is a shed manufacturer in Scotland. And so you might see it and say, Marcus, this is a not the same. I'm a software company. I'm a service, whatever. Come on, y'all. Let's just like use the principle. Don't get caught up in like the example. If we're getting caught up in the example, we're not catching the vision of what's possible. We're not doing our job as great marketers. So she's got this great pricing. Gillies and McKay sheds have this pricing page, and on this pricing page, it's in the navigation bar. That's awesome. They got a table of contents. That's awesome. They immediately have a video that's about their pricing. As you continue go down the page, you've got how much does a Gillies and McKay shed cost? Their CEO, Kara, she explains very clearly, like gives you a sense of all the factors. They talk about what's included, our prices include this and that. They talk about what goes into the buildings and what you get for it. This is all one page, by the way. They talk about where your money goes. Like literally, like if you're giving us your money, where does it go? So they tell you where they get their materials from, where it's sourced from, the names of the people that they buy from. I mean, who does that? That's great, right? So it's this whole story. They talk about the stuff that's out of their control. They even have some frequently asked questions. And then they finally have a book of consultation. That's a whole pricing page right there. All right. And so do you have a pricing page that looks something like that? That's great. That's beautiful. She didn't give you an exact price necessarily. You don't have to give an exact price, but you do got to be willing to own the conversation. And don't just give a quote form. That just drives people crazy. You hate it as a consumer, as a buyer. So do your buyers. I think we can be better, and it's time to be better. All right. So pillar number 2, that was say, and we could go into the big 5 in depth, but we'll just call it right there. I would challenge you to really address those big 5 really, really well. One thing that you could do is just to get a sense for this. If you go to AI today and just say, hey, here's the product service that I sell. I want to do a brainstorm of the big 5 using Marcus Sheridan's They Ask You Answer. Can you give me 10 examples of the big 5 article video titles from Marcus Sheridan's They Ask You Answer? Give me 10 for each. You'll probably see that. Okay, boom. There's a perfect start. Super simple prompt, really effective. AI obviously knows what it is. All right. So pillar number 2, let's show what others aren't willing to show. Let me give you an example of this. So my swimming pool company, River Pools, we started manufacturing pools after we blew up from the Ask You Answer, and we were the first manufacturer as a B2B to C company. We were the first one in the world to show exactly how we make our pools. Now, we created a series of videos that were eight parts, 10 minutes long each, so about 80 minutes of video. You literally could watch the whole thing and see exactly how to start your own manufacturing company. I got calls from other manufacturers saying, Marcus, this is crazy because you're showing exactly how you do it. And that's just not what we do. And I'm like, that's not what you do, but I do that because I want to drive more trust than everybody else in the market. And so we were the first ones to show it. And it caused an incredible explosion of growth because homeowners were like, finally, somebody's willing to show this. And so we've seen lots of companies do this. Here's another company here. This is a manufacturer of metal roofing products. And they know one of the major questions that people have about a metal roof is, so like, what are the problems with the metal roof? So this company is called Sheffield Metals. They have the metal roofing channel. By the way, 46,000 subs on a metal roofing channel. This is Sheffield Metals, though. Of course, they name it the metal roofing channel, which is smart, by the way, right? Ideally, you name the thing, not necessarily your company name, but what it is or what it educates it on. But by the way, just as a side note for YouTube, I think there's an argument to be made that your YouTube channel is going to be more important than your website in 5 years. I think it's like a pretty strong argument that we could make that that's going to happen. Okay. So for some of you, that's already the case, but I see this is where we're headed. But look at this. They are a metal roofing manufacturer. They openly talk about the problems with metal roofing because this is what people want to know before they buy a metal roof. And oh, by the way, this one has 570,000 views, right? I mean, who's researching that? Either somebody that has a metal roofing problem or somebody that wants to buy a metal roof. That's the only two people that are researching that. So pretty cool. All right. Pillar number three. Pillar number three. Sell in ways others aren't willing to sell. So hopefully, so far you've done an audit. You're like, all right, am I really talking about what others aren't in my space aren't talking about online? Prices, problems, comparisons, reviews, best, things like that. Am I showing with video what others aren't willing to show? Am I showing our secret sauce, whatever that thing is? All right. Pillar number three, sell in ways others aren't willing to sell. So I got a stat here for you. I don't know if you've seen this stat, but this is something that as marketers, we sure as heck better be paying close attention to. This came from Gartner, and they said 75% of buyers say they would prefer to have a seller-free sales experience. 75% of buyers. Well, chew on them apples, will you? That is wild, isn't it? So what does this mean? Well, it doesn't mean that we hate salespeople. It just means that we don't want to talk to a salesperson until we're good and ready. Like that's what you want. That's what I want. We want to be comfortable. We want to be confident. We want to feel like I'm not going to make a mistake. So that's what we want. And so how do we address this? You see, a lot of people look at this and they'll say, oh, geez, I just wish it was the way that it used to be. Of course, this is an advanced group of marketers. We don't think that. We say, there's a trend, and I'm going to take advantage of this trend. And so, how do we take advantage of it? We do it through self-service. Now, in the book, Endless Customers, I talk extensively about 5 different types of self-service tools. I think self-service is the future, certainly, of website experiences. These are, those interactive tools that somebody can take on your website or online that allows them to get more answers than previously they could get or take actions they previously couldn't take without talking to a human first because they want to feel like they're in control. So what are they? So the first type is self-assessment tool. This is when you give somebody like an assessment or a score or readiness score, right? Now, the best tool I've seen for that is called Score app. I don't know if anybody here has used that. Super, super cool tool, very inexpensive. My friend Daniel Priestley came up with it. Scoreapp.com. You can find it there. Self-selection tools, I'll show an example of that in a second, but self-selection is when we allow someone to make a choice and we give a recommendation. So for example, let's say that you sell multiple things that people constantly ask you, should I get this or should I get that? What would you suggest? Well, self-selection is the key to that. So let's take a company from Boston, HubSpot, right? If you go to HubSpot's website right now, they've got their pricing page, their tiers, and it's got like this good, better, best, or basic, pro, enterprise. I forget what it is when it comes to their stuff. So if I'm HubSpot, I say a lot of people will look at that and they won't know immediately which one should I get. So what they should have is a tool that is interactive that says get a recommendation as to what type or what level of HubSpot you should get for your business without any bias. And it asks you a series of questions, and based on your answers, questions would be like, how big, maybe how many employees do you have? How many salespeople do you have? It's like all those types of things, right? So they're going to ask you whatever they would normally ask you in the sales environment to be able to make a recommendation. Same thing here. But now it would give you a recommendation of, hey, based on what you said, based on your answers, here's the level of HubSpot we would recommend because you said this, this, and that. Now, why SaaS companies don't do that, I have no idea, but they should. Okay. Then you got self-configurators. This is where it allows the person to build the thing. We know when somebody builds the thing, they become very invested in the thing. So sometimes that could be building a plan. Like if you have different plans that normally a salesperson would build, could you potentially ask a series of questions and allow the prospect to build that on your website? Baller. Now, next one is pricing tools. So self-pricing is the future, definitely of service, definitely of service. This is one of those things where a lot of companies are super, they really push back on this one. But I can tell you right now, it is magic the conversion rates that come from self-pricing tools where you give them an estimate, key phrase estimate for that particular product or service. But mainly, usually, it's some type of service and then self-scheduling tools. And this is when someone can schedule time with by talking to a salesperson without being forced to talk to a human first. Now, my company, Impact, we've been running experiments with self-scheduling. Something crazy that we found. By the way, we do this with Yale Appliance. With Yale Appliance, you can, if you want to get if you want to visit their retail store, you can schedule that on their website. But what's so cool about Yale is when you schedule that on the website, they show you all their salespeople. You get to see each salesperson. You get to read a bio about each one. And so you get to choose which salesperson you want to work with. It's like the Uber of working with salespeople. Who wouldn't want to choose their salesperson? Everybody wants to choose their own salesperson, right? And so because of that, we've found that we've done this with enough companies now that we know closing rates double when they can choose their own salesperson. Is that not fly or what? That's pretty wild. And so that's one thing that you're going to see a lot of that in the future. It doubles it every single time, right? Um, Suzanne said website grader was a great example of a self-assessment tool. You were dead on about that. In fact, Suzanne, website grader is the reason why we're having this conversation today, because that was the first tool that I ever took, and Dharmesh was way ahead of his time with that tool. Um, when I got a 17 out of 100 for riverpoolsandspas.com, I about like threw up in my mouth and I said, not today. And then I just got crazy about doing like all the inboundy things. And every day I would go back to websitegrader.com and I would literally get a new score. And I was like obsessed with it. So Dharmesh was like gamifying and doing self-service before any of us were like out of high school. What a baller. All right. So that's self-service. That's self-service. Let me give you a couple of examples. If you go to the River Pools website right now, as soon as you come to the site, we hit you with self-service because this is what people want. So the first one is a shape size pool selector. So I know that you might not know what shape and size you want. So I want to get that out of the way before you talk to a salesperson. I don't want to wait. Why would I wait? That doesn't make sense. I want you saying, I already know what shape I want. And so we have this interactive experience that gives you a recommendation. Then let's say someone's like, well, I don't know what type of pool I want. I don't know if I want concrete, vinyl, fiberglass. Well, now we've got this tool that gives an honest recommendation. Every single day, people take this tool, this interactive quiz, if you will, and we recommend that they don't buy fiberglass. Wild, huh? Nobody does that. We do it. Why? Because we all, the voice of trust. And then finally, we've got this build and price your pool tool. We are the first manufacturer as a B2B to do that. And we give this really cool estimate. All right. So let me show you how that works, self-pricing. So everybody said to us as a manufacturer, well, you can't really have an estimating tool because you don't set the end price because we've got dealers. So how do we set the end price? Well, we don't. But what we can do is we can give a range. So let's say that you went to the Riverpool site and you wanted to build and price your pool. So you would go there and you would see the different types of pools. We show you different examples. And this is a lot like what you would experience with a salesperson. It really mimics that, like that whole conversation with a salesperson. So you would choose that, and then you would choose, we explain what you get with your base package, like your standard package. And anything that's not immediately obvious, we're going to have that link of what is this, because we're going to continue to teach you as you go through this experience, which, by the way, any interactive tool is great for sunk cost fallacy, right? Because the more time they spend working with you, like your stuff, your tool, better off you're going to be. Then as they continue to go through this, they get to make choices like patio. They make more choices like you see here, like features, options, etc. They get to choose, they get to see their extras. They see all of this. And then, boom, we say, fill out the form. It's going to be instantly emailed to you, which is super powerful. And then as soon as that happens, now they're going to get an answer. We're going to say, hey, we received your submission, but look, this is what the email they get. We give them a ballpark range. We even tell them their estimated monthly payment. And this is what they said they wanted. The range is big, I know, but this is more than any other manufacturer gives. And this produces 1 to 200 leads a day. 1 to 200 leads a day during the summertime. And what's crazy is the other manufacturers don't do it because they're so busy thinking there's no way we could give any type of estimator because we're a manufacturer. And I say, au contraire, mon frere. All right. So does anybody have a question about that? Everybody tracking with me. Everybody picking up what I'm putting down here. Hopefully you are, and you are with me on this. On this. All right. We're about out of time. I wanted to mention to let me just jump to the final element of this, which is with leads. One thing that we're doing this year that's really working is when it comes to leads, we're following the 5-minute rule on all leads. It's making a huge difference because responding to leads within 5 minutes increases the conversion rate by 900% in terms of actually having a conversation. So we're integrating AI so we have those immediate conversations. 78% of the time, the first company they talk to is who they go with. So make sure you do that. And finally, fourth pillar was just be more human. Who's the face behind your brand? So you want to make sure you have a face. Who's your Colonel Sanders? Who's your Jenner? Who's your Gary Vee? We want to make sure we have that. So your job as a marketer is to make sure you build those faces. So anyway, Endless Customers comes out. It's available next week. And so you can get it here. And so make sure that you pick it up if you would. It's endlesscustomers.com. And I would just challenge you to think really differently. Like, are you truly being different than anyone else in your space? And hopefully you are. And hopefully you're challenging the norms and you're embracing those 4 pillars. If anybody wants the slides, I'm happy to send them to you as well. Got a little survey there from my team at Impact. So if you want the slides, I'm happy to send those to you. They'll send out this recording too. I don't know if they'll do that, but other than that, that's about it. And Emily, I'll turn it back to you.
Cool. Any questions?
Any questions, anyone? Good. Very practical. We're all about the practical. We're all about
No
the practical.
questions. I just wanted to say thank you, Marcus. I'm coming to you from Cincinnati. I'm on the AMA in Cincinnati on the board, and this was a great presentation.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad that you were here. And my kids just went to Cincinnati like a couple months ago to see Benson Boone and couldn't stop talking about it. So I'm glad to have you all represented.
Sounds great. You have a wonderful afternoon.
You
Thank you,
all
everybody.
too.
Thank you, Emily. Bye.
Questions, guys? Questions?
Well, hey, Marcus, love the material and your energy is contagious. Thank you.
Hey,
I just
that's
had
nice.
a
Thanks.
quick one on the pillars. Do you, I might have just blended together the selling versus being more human, the fourth one. What was like, what's the elevator pitch on the human part? As I wonder a little bit about, with the role of self-service and automation,
Yeah.
what's the human aspect, the way you're
So
thinking about it?
yeah, and we shouldn't have time today to talk about the human element, but I think there's a couple things. Number one, we have to, when it comes to the leaders in our organization, we have to get them to accept the idea that I can't be behind the desk, I can't be behind the camera, I've got to be in front of the camera. In fact, there needs to be multiple faces that are associated with our brand, whether it's on a local or a national level. I think that's everybody's fiduciary at this point in time to do that. So that's number one. Whereas that wasn't as required before, Henrik, I think it is becoming very required now. Another example of that is I'm amazed at how often sales teams don't use video-based email and instead just use text-based email, which I think is absurd. Look, there's times when you should send a text-based email. There's a lot of times when you should send a video-based email. And the fact that very few, especially in B2B, salespeople send video-based email. We've been doing email the same for 25 years, if you think about it. Text-based only, not a lot of advancements with it. And so that's something that is like putting the human behind the brand. Then I do think there's ways to use the AI. I would expect that Riverpools is going to have a digital avatar of myself or one of my team members that is going to be the chat bot on the site by the end of the year. I think HeyGen and some of those other tools are so close. They're just not quite there yet for me. And somebody might say, well, that doesn't seem very like human. I think it actually is, because if you could see me, my voice, and it said, hey, I'm Marcus's digital avatar. I'm using his brain. I'm going to answer all your questions that you have based on stuff that he's written or said online before, and we can have a full conversation right now with you on our website. I think that is very human, because that to me is more human than them reading my words on my website, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's a strong, strong place for those digital chatbots to create a very human-like feel. I personally, my personal brand, Henry, I'm going to put out a digital avatar this year. I'm just going to give it to the world, and it'll just be like, ask me anything. What would Marcus do? And I'm going to make it free. And I see it as just, scaling me, helping people one-on-one.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, bud. Great questions. Any other questions? Anybody else? All right, cool. Well, I hope you have an amazing, amazing day and an amazing year, and keep doing it differently as marketers. That's got to be the goal. That's got to be where we come from, a place of uniqueness today. So thanks so much, everyone.